Hi, this tutorial is going to be about the merge node, and I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the merge node. Someone sent me an email just asking about the merge node and if I could maybe explain it. There are a lot of drop-down menus inside the merge node, and if you're not too comfortable with it, or it could be a bit intimidating right off the start. So the merge node, basically, at its most basic, it puts A over B. So if I look over here, and if I connect this, this model I did not make. I downloaded it off the internet, and I honestly forget where I got it from. So if you know, just message me, and I'll put a link in to this person's website. But he had like a ZBrush tool that he was letting people download. So my apologies to this guy. I forget where I got this from, but thank you for making that available. And so if we look at the merge node, you can see right here, A is over B, and we have the over operation turned on. And that's the first thing we're going to take a look at. If you go over here to operation, you can see all these different ways of mixing and combining things one over the other. So if I go over here and set that to plus, or if I set it to minus, it'll give us very different looks and different operations. So the first thing I want to do is just look at what this does and what this means. And so if you look at this, you can see there's quite a few. And when I started compositing, I didn't really understand any of this stuff. And so I would just try whatever until I got the one that I thought looked good. And the default operation is over. So you can sort of see, like we have this over here, and this is giving us our result. But I want to take a look at what over really means. And once we figure out what over really means, it's a lot easier for you to figure out what these other ones will do. If you hover over top of the operation drop-down menu, you'll see like a little sheet that gives you like all the tooltips for what all this does. And in fact, if you go to the help and you go to inputs and controls, you'll get a little bit more of a description about what all of those do. But I want to break it down and just sort of, give us a good base to start with. So if you look at where it says over, it has A plus B and then in brackets 1 minus A. So if I just write this down, so that was capital A plus B, and then brackets, and then 1 minus A. And so let's make this real big so we can see it. And I'm going to just make this a little bit smaller. Okay. So A, capital A, means the image that's coming down the pipe, down the A pipe. And B stands for the RGB information that's coming in on the B side. And then it says 1 minus, and then a lowercase a. So, I did very badly in math at school, but I know that when you're supposed to figure out equations, you do stuff in the brackets first. And the other thing I know is that if there's brackets beside something, the implied operation is multiply. So if you go in here, and it could also be written this way, where we're going to take 1 minus A, and then it gets multiplied by B, and then it gets added to A. So let's start with this bit here first. So 1 minus lowercase a. So 1, in this case, could just be a constant set to 1. So there's our 1. And minus A is the alpha from the A layer. So here's the A layer over here. I need to get the alpha. So I'm just going to get a shuffle. And I'm just going to grab the alpha from that. So if I look at the shuffle, it's giving me this. It's just the alpha of the image. So I need 1 minus A. So I'm going to get a merge node. And I'm just going to set that to minus. And it gives me this. So 1 minus A, really what that means is it's going to give me the inverted alpha of the A layer. Okay, so that's what this part of the equation means. 1 minus A, and it's giving me this. Well, then it's going to be multiplied by the image of the B layer. So I'm just going to put this over here because this is kind of like what Nuke does, and we're going to kind of do it on our own over here. So if I take that B layer, I want to multiply it by this, what I've done over here. So I'm going to get my merge node, and I'm going to attach it over here. And I'm going to set that, take that to the background layer. And I'm going to set that to multiply. Okay, so that's what this part now over here. So B multiplied by 1 minus A, it gives us this. So basically, I'm getting the B layer, and the B layer, or the B image, it has that cut out where our hero is going to be. And then the last bit is plus A. So that's going to add the A layer on top of this. So I'm going to get another merge, and I'm just going to go over here, but I'm going to make sure that this is set to plus. And when I do that, it gets comped over top. And so you can see we get the same result as we did over here with the over. So that's what all this stuff is. And you know, like a very, very smart compositor told me like 10 years ago that all compositing is like visual math. And when I heard that, it kind of freaked me out because I'm not very good at math. But really, the basis of all compositing is being able to break down these and obviously you don't have to do this. You don't have to know this. But if you know how this works, it can prevent problems later on when you get into more advanced comping and, you know, when it gets more complicated. So, you know, it's good to have a good understanding of what all this stuff means. And if you hover over top, you can sort of see the equations and the way they're written down. I'm not going to go through all of these because, to be honest, there's still a few in this list that I don't totally understand. You know, I have an idea of what they do, but if you were to ask me what is exactly happening if I look at when the merge node is set to color burn, I know that they're kind of mixing things together, and I know the contrast. Like, I know that it's like layer B is affecting layer A, but I don't really know exactly how it's doing that. And I know like color dodge is making it brighter, and it's kind of like it's adding it to the background, but not exactly, because if I go here and hit plus, it's going to give me a different look than color dodge. So I'm not 100% sure exactly what this does, and I could probably look it up, but I haven't bothered because, to be honest, I rarely really need this effect, and usually I can get something color corrected to make it look the way I want it to. But there are a few things in here that you should know. You should sort of, you know, have a good idea of what they do. You know, of course, there's over is the default operation. And actually, you may be in a situation where, let's say you have some live action footage. So let me just find some live action footage. I'm just going to pause the recording here for a sec. Okay, so let's say you know, you're playing a key on this, and for some reason you decide to use Nuke's default keyer. And I'm just gonna get a bit more space here. And in the keyer, you know, I'm gonna set this to green screen, and then, you know, I'm gonna be just harsh with this. So I have an alpha here, but you'll notice that this node does not automatically pre-multiply the alpha by the RGB. And, you know, this is something that often, like, people, especially like people, when they first start compositing, like I had a lot of trouble understanding like multiplication and all that stuff. And maybe I should make a video on that. But it's just basically, like it's taking the alpha, and if I look at the value over here, in the alpha, that's 0. So anything that gets multiplied by 0 goes to 0. And if I look at the value over here, that value is 1. So anything you multiply by 1 is going to stay the same. And over here, this is going to be like a fraction. It's like a decimal. It's like 0.32. So anything that gets multiplied by 0.32 will be a smaller number. And if it's smaller, it means it's going to be darker. So if I look at this and I do a pre-mult, then it's multiplying the RGB by the RGB by the alpha. Okay, so it's multiplying the color that we have by the alpha. And yes, I know it's a horrible key, but that's not what we're focusing on. Now, some people, when I first started Nuke, I would like, okay, I'm putting a key over here, and I'm going to get my merge node, and I'm going to just pipe this into, let's say, this wonderful background, and I'm going to pipe this in over here, and I'd be like, whoa, why is this all bright now? Like, if I look at the background is this color, and here's my guy over here, and when I look at it, it's all bright and it looks like semi-transparent. Or if I use, like, say, a checkerboard instead, and I just connect that there, you can see that, whoa, it looks like now instead of a gray checkerboard like I would want, now it's like a green checkerboard. Well, I mean, if we go through and we look at how the over operation is working, you can see if we just do the same thing that we did over here. So I'm going to get a shuffle. And if we look at our equation of how this stuff is being put together, the shuffle, I'm just going to go over here and grab the alpha after the key. So there it is there. And then I'm going to get a constant, and I'll give it pure white, and then I'll create a merge, set that merge to minus. Okay, so I'm just doing this part here where I'm getting the invert of the alpha, then it gets multiplied by the B layer. So here's my B layer, and I'm going to, oops, sorry, I'm just completely disorganized over here. So if I go over here and set this to multiply, and now that's poked out that hole that's over there. But now here's the part where we run into problems. So this is all working fine, but now that last step, remember the last step over here was we're adding the RGB on top of our background. So it just goes in like that. And over here, I'm trying to do the same thing, but I'm gonna take my green screen over here, and then I'm going to go over here, and if I set that to plus, you can see I get now the same thing that I had over here in my over. If I go back and forth, you can see that it's the same thing. So that's why after the green screen, it's important to do a pre-mult. The over operation is expecting a pre-multiplied image. So if I look over here at the over, now that's going to work right because now it's pre-multing. It's multiplying the alpha by the RGB. And so as a result, it gets rid of all this stuff over here, and then it gets merged together. Now you don't have to necessarily do that. You could instead, if I go to the merge node and go instead of over, I could say mat, and then it does the exact same thing. And the reason for that is because mat, if you look, it'll actually multiply. It'll expect the A layer not to be pre-multiplied, and it'll pre-multiply it inside the merge node. So then you get something like that. There's lots of things. Like I've seen people do things that I consider kind of odd with merge nodes. Like you'll use it. Like I've seen people do stuff like if someone wanted to roto something, they would get a roto, and then they would, make their mask, and then they would get a merge node, and then they would do it to something, and they would set it to something like in. or maybe this has to be set to RGBA, and probably flip it around, yeah. So I've seen people do things like this, where it's like they wanted to keep that, and so they would create a roto, and then they would merge it, and they would set that merge to in, and if give this in auto alpha, so this actually still has an alpha there. And you know, to me, whenever I see stuff like that, I mean, maybe people work that way in other studios, but I've always thought this to be a very convoluted and confusing way of working. I would always, but I've seen it, and some people maybe are very comfortable working that way. But I mean, if I had to do that, I would just create a roto and you know, replace the alpha that's there, and then afterwards drop down a pre-mult and do it like that. But I mean, whatever people are used to. So we've kind of strayed a bit from the original topic, which is the merge node. And so hopefully, I mean, if you're really curious now, you can go in and you can figure out what all these other operations do. The main ones to keep in mind are plus, which just adds A plus B, minus, which subtracts A from B. There's also from, which is just inverting it. So instead of A minus B, it's B minus A. Why it's called from, I'm not really too sure. And then, you know, in and out can be helpful in certain situations. So if you have out or if you have in, you know, it can flip things around, and you're just basically putting something into the other input's alpha. And those are honestly like the main ones, are maximum and minimum. So max will show the brightest. It doesn't really matter what's on top or what's underneath it. It'll give you the same result. It'll just give you the brightest pixel, and then minimum is the opposite, where it'll show you the darkest. And also, when you turn this on, there's alpha masking. So what that means is that this will only affect the areas where there's like an alpha. So for example, if I go here, and if it looks at this layer and it's saying minimum, that means it's going to show the darkest pixel. So obviously these are really dark pixels over here. These are at 0. So when I go here and I click on minimum, then this wall is going to get totally wiped out because of all the dark pixels that are in that area. If I turn on alpha masking, then what happens instead is that minimum is still working, but it's only happening on the areas where there's an alpha channel. So if I look at his hand, you can see that the dark pixels are showing through there. And if I look over here, you can see that this shadow, this contact shadow, is showing through. Okay, but if you don't have alpha masking turned on, then it just applies it to the whole image, including areas that maybe you aren't that interested in having it work on. Like maybe you only want it to work on the area, like on the A layer where there's an alpha channel. So keep that in mind. Video color space is something I never really use, but what it does is it converts it before it merges these together. Before it does all that math operation stuff, it will convert it usually to sRGB, and then it will do all that operation. So sometimes if you need things to match exactly something that happened in Photoshop, for example, I believe sometimes you may want to turn on video color space. But most of the time you wouldn't bother having to do that. The next one down is set the bounding. So I'm going to move on from this. If you have other questions, or if you noticed I said something completely wrong, please point it out. Like it would be very boring if I went through each one of these. So anyways, I'm gonna move on from that. The next one down is set the bounding box. So the bounding box is, I think, one of Nuke's really great things that it has, like one of its great features. And a lot of compositors, I think, don't maybe take full advantage of it when they should, or when they could. So the bounding box basically is, it says where Nuke is going to process. So down here, this is the size of the comp. That's dictated by either your project settings or your the size of your B layer. Your B layer drives the size of your comp. So over here, it says it's 1280 by 720. Up here, this is different though. This tells you the size of your bounding box. And we can see other examples. If I just maybe make like a roto, you can see here that the bounding box resizes, and you don't get that number up here. It's actually over here, and then this tells you the coordinate of like the bottom left-hand corner, and this tells you the coordinate of the top right-hand corner. And what this is going to do with Nuke is only going to process the information that's inside the bounding box. So all the stuff over here, Nuke doesn't even process. It doesn't even worry about it. Okay, so let's say over here you have set bounding box to union. And where that's really helpful is, say for example, let's say I had this guy and I transformed it and I moved it over here. Well, what that means is that now you see how the bounding box has totally like expanded beyond the edge of the image. And where this is helpful is that this information still exists inside of Nuke. Nuke is still processing it. And if I needed to, like maybe later on down the comp, I needed to bring this information back. So if I move it over, you can see that here is our guy. He hasn't been lost. Nothing has been clipped. And you'll notice that Nuke's default behavior is that any pixels that are along the edge get repeated for infinity. So that's why the wall, you can sort of see these stretch marks here in the wall. That's those edge pixels that are being repeated vertically, and over here these are getting repeated horizontally. If you don't like that behavior, you can always just add a node called black outside. And I don't know what's going on over here, I have no idea. Probably something bad with my EXR file or something, but if you look over here, this is now creating, something is messed up with this file. But now what this has done basically is the black outside node, all it does is it adds 1 pixel of black all around your image, and that is what would get repeated. Well, I don't know if that really gets repeated. I mean, maybe it does or doesn't, I'm not sure, but because it's black, now when that gets moved around, you can see over here that doesn't happen. If I go to black outside and I turn that off, you can see it's just going to keep getting repeated. So what we can do, if I go back to this merge node over here, now sometimes you want this information, but sometimes in your comp you don't need it. Like for example, let's say that you were given a matte painting and the matte painting was really, really big, and it was bigger than what your final image was going to be. Well, you have all this extra information that Nuke is kind of carrying around that we don't really need. So what you can do is you can say, well, I'm going to set the bounding box to the B layer. And when I click on that, you can see that now that has taken the bounding box and it is resizing it so it's just the size of layer B. And now if that were to get transformed, you would see that now all this stuff is going to get cut off because the bounding box was set to layer B. If I set it to layer A, and then that means that the bounding box is just going to clip over here what the A layer was set to, and then we get that repeating pixels because these are up against the edge of frame over here. Okay, and intersection is, I have no idea, I've never used it, so I'm assuming it's just, between the two and it's sort of cutting them off. But I always usually it's either B or it's set to union, depending on what you need. Now, the reason why this comp is so kind of slow is I've actually rendered off many different layers. This is a multi-channel EXR, and if I look over here, you can see that I have like the direct diffuse from one light, and then I have the diffuse from another light, and I have the diffuse from an area light. That's all like environment light. And then I have the same thing for the indirect lighting. So normally, I think the way that most people work, and this is kind of the way that I would recommend it, is that you shuffle these out before you comp. So for example, if I have a shuffle, and if I go over here and I set the direct diffuse, and if this is confusing, I'm pretty sure I did a tutorial on render passes. So hopefully, if I'm going too fast, you can refer to that. And I've also did a tutorial on the shuffle nodes. So normally the way that most people work is they would shuffle this out, and then they could just add these together. So if I go here and set that to plus, and then copy that, and then paste it over here, and then go over here, and this one is set to plus. And then you can play around with the merge with the mix in it to change the opacity. Remember that mix only affects the A layer, so it's sort of like an opacity control that you have command over. So this is the way that I would recommend that you work, just because, and the reason why I would recommend that you work this way is because it's very easy. If you just click and you hit 1, you can see what's going on in these nodes very easily. But there is another way that you can work inside of Nuke. So if I hit a merge node and pipe both of these in, so the A layer and B layer are both connected to this guy, and then I go over here to the merge node and I say right here, well, I'm going to take instead of comping the RGB with the RGB to give me the output over here, I'm going to say take the direct diffuse light and put that over the direct diffuse from the other light, and then instead of over, I would set that to plus to add the two together. So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of diving into the EXR file, and I'm specifying, instead of using the RGB, which is what we see here, we're actually going inside and we're grabbing some of the layers that I rendered off in the EXR file. So again, I can play around with the mix to control, how much this is affecting the other one, and the output is being set to RGBA. So that means that I'm seeing the result of my output. If I wanted to, I could go in here and I could make a new set of channels. I could say, well, I'm going to just store this. So I'm going to say new, and that's going to be output to, temp guy lighting. And I can just hit auto, and that'll create red, green, blue, and alphas, and click OK. And of course I can't have spaces inside this. So I'll click OK. So now what's happening is I'm doing this, and it's being saved into a new set of channels that I made called temp guy lighting. And if I go over here and look for temp guy lighting, which is right here, there I can see the result. And I'm just still seeing the RGB because I haven't really done anything to the RGB. I've just been comping this stuff together. Now I don't really recommend that you use merge this way. The main reason is because it's very difficult to tell what's going on just by looking at your comp. They do try to help because it does say the operation you're doing, and it says where this is being saved out to. It also gives you the clue that the RGB and alpha are not being manipulated, because if it were to get processed, they would turn big. Like for example, if I connect a blur node to this, right now nothing is being processed, but as soon as I change it, you can see those become big dashes there. So when I look at this, you can sort of see, oh yeah, it's difficult to tell exactly what's going on. And if you look at it, I can't even see it because it's buried in some other layer. You'd have to actually go into the node and look. And especially if you're taking over a comp from someone else, this can be a huge pain in the ass to try to figure out. So I would not recommend this. Other thing, if I merge these two layers together, let me just see something here. So we see, merging the RGB from the B channel. We have the output. There's also a also merge. So what that does is you can also include other layers in this merge to be kind of brought along for the ride. So I don't have a good example of that handy right now, but that's what it's for. It's so that you can include other passes or other layers to be affected by the operation. The next one down is about masking. Oh, and actually, before I continue, once you connect the A layer, you'll notice that another little input gets visible, and you see there's A2. So if I grab, let's say, this roto, if I just make it colorful, so I'll just give it, select it, and make it colorful. Then I could go over here, and then I could merge that, and then now that is going to be merged in as well. And then you could have A3, and then you could have A4. You could have multiple inputs into your merge nodes. Generally speaking, I don't know what the really big companies do, but generally speaking, I tend to avoid doing this, having multiple inputs into a merge node. That could just be because I like keeping things simple, so I just like to have it so that it's A over B like that. One of the reasons why is that is the mix node, it will affect everything, like all the A layers get affected by that. And there's been times in the past where I've not wanted that behavior. I just generally prefer working like simple. And so having multiple things going into a merge node, I can sometimes screw me up. So I generally, if I wanted to do that, I would make another merge node underneath it and connect, and have this beautiful comp like that. And that's just the way that I work. Also, I tend to have the B layer coming down. I've been horrible with that in this tutorial, and the A layer usually comes in from the side. And I know some companies, they work like CG elements would come in on this side, and live action elements would come in from another side, so that it's more standardized. The next thing is just the mask, and this is just the usual mask controls that you find in any tool inside of Nuke. So if I were to, let's say, connect to this mask over here and just get rid of this, then it's only going to merge the area that is inside this roto over here. And then you have controls for inverting the mask, so that flips it around. You have this one here, inject, and what that will do is now you'll have a new layer called mask, and so this mask will get brought along. It shows up as red just because it gets put in the first kind of color buffer. It just gets put in the R channel, but don't worry about it. You can still, you can isolate it out and you can still use it as a mask, but it just sort of, it takes that and it makes it as part of your flow of nodes. So if you were to go down, you could use it again. All you would have to do is, if I went to this blur node, now I could go in and I could select mask and then go here and it would blur along that, rather than doing something like this, which in your comps can get kind of ugly if you have a lot of diagonal lines going all across things. You may want to just inject the mask at a point and then just say use that mask, and it does sort of say, oh, I'm using a mask over in here internally. There's not a mask being kind of connected from another thing, and it will tell you what channel you're using for the mask. So I think that's about it. I think that's everything regarding the merge node. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you found this helpful. I was, when I was sort of planning out this tutorial, I was thinking of actually just going through all the different operations in the merge tool to kind of figure out what all this stuff means, but it just would have made the tutorial way longer and I think a lot more boring. If you do have questions, feel free to email me or contact me, and if I get enough, maybe I would make a tutorial just on this. But I think most people are intelligent enough. You can sort of figure out what the basics do and work from there. So that's it. I hope you found this useful.